That was a big part of that game and that run. The fact that Brandon Graham, you don't have to worry about the edge with Brandon Graham. He's going to set the edge as a run defender. And now you got to worry about it. And you got to worry about it big time. And if Brandon Graham is in that game, Jody, the Cowboys can't afford to go in and say, okay, these guys can't make plays. We're just going to double team Fletcher and Javon, and we're going to run the football. They couldn't do that if Brandon was out there. That's how drastically things can change in this league.
Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Hump day, middle of the week, short week as a matter of fact. Eagles have to turn around pretty quickly after playing on Monday night. Oh, and no bargain. The Kansas City Chiefs coming to town. And J-Mac, as I mentioned before we went to break, wanted to talk a little bit about the Eagle defense. Oh, Patrick Mahomes is coming to town. That's good for the Eagle defense. They get to try and stop the toughest quarterback to stop in the National Football League. Not good. Gannon's defense had been pretty damn impressive the first couple of weeks, John. We talked about it prior to the game. Points allowed, one of the top in the league. Yards allowed, one of the top in the league. Yeah, they didn't have a turnover yet, but that was okay. They'd slowed down both of their two opponent quarterbacks the previous 2 weeks. Garoppolo didn't exactly tear him apart. He was what he is. He's a game manager, and he managed the 49ers to a win. A couple of lengthy drives did bother me a little bit about the Eagles in week number 2. And then was week 3, where the Dallas Cowboys, you talk about the tale of two teams. The Eagles ran the ball, you can't even say ineffectively, because they didn't run the ball. One of the 3 runs they had was like for 20 yards by Miles Sanders. You can't say ineffectively when you don't run the ball. 3 handoffs for the entire game, as compared to the Dallas Cowboys, who basically every time they ran the ball got 7 yards. They didn't break any 25, 30-yarders, but no one got stopped at the line of scrimmage. There were no tackles for loss. There was a hold. There was a missed tackle, broken tackle. And before you knew it, the Cowboys were at 2nd and 2. Basically, every single drive, all they did was your guy against my guy, mano a mano. Let's block this up. Let's hand it to one of our 2 talented backs, and we'll get well ahead of the sticks by the time we get the 2nd down. That's kind of an indictment of Jonathon Gannon's defense, J-Mac.
Yeah, I don't know if it is, other than I kind of look at it in a different way, because I've been talking about these linebackers for a long time, and specifically Eric Wilson coming in here, and it manifested itself in week 3. So I kind of look at it as he kind of masked the deficiency for 2 weeks, and then it showed up against a team that could take advantage of it. Remember, a lot of teams don't even want to take advantage of the fact that the Eagles have no linebackers that can stop the run. And the ones they do have, TJ Edwards, most notably, they don't have confidence to put him on the field in passing situations. So it's a catch-22. Andy Reid this week, I don't think you have to worry about it as much. You should watch that film. If you're an opposing offensive head coach or an offensive coordinator, you should watch the Dallas Cowboys against the Eagles and say, okay, we're going to double Fletch. We're going to double Javon Hargrave. And then we're going to force the edge players and the linebackers to beat us and make tackles in the running game. There's not a lot of NFL teams that do that. Maybe Baltimore, San Francisco is one of those teams, and they did a really good job against San Francisco. I think the Brandon Graham injury affects that because he was such a good run defender as an edge player. But if you can get to that second level against the Eagles linebackers, they can't tackle anybody. And when they do, it's 7 yards down the field. And, I got that quote, and it was kind of harsh from Minnesota, from somebody in Minnesota who said Wilson was a 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team, meaning he put up statistics, but it wasn't effective. And you kind of saw it. I mean, that is not a traditional NFL middle linebacker. And if you're going to run the ball downhill against the Eagles and he's on the field, they're going to have some problems.
Well, somebody has to be on the field. Somebody has to play linebacker. We all like Alex Singleton because he plays hard.
He did not play well either, by the way,
right.
Alex.
I was going to, that's what the point I was trying to make, because he plays active and he tries to play fast, but he's not a just win the point of attack, take a head-on shot from a line running back and drive him 2 yards backwards. That's not the kind of linebacker he is. He's the kind of guy who makes a play with his speed, running a guy down toward the sidelines. The Cowboys said, we'll stay between the two tackles, and we're just going to push you off the football. The Eagles don't have a Jeremiah Trotter on this team that's going to win at the point of attack.
And few teams do. I mean, that's just the modern NFL. Those guys have become sort of dinosaurs, the downhill linebackers. And if they are out there, like TJ Edwards is more of that type, they're regarded as two down players at best, and you got to get them off the field quickly. At this point, I got to seriously think about playing TJ Edwards more and living with some of the other stuff, especially if I'm playing so much zone anyway. You know, Eric Wilson's strength as a player is he's a really good pass coverage linebacker, but the Eagles are playing a lot of zone. So maybe that doesn't show up as much anyway. And that's how you would, in my opinion, if I'm going to play that much zone, I'm going to let TJ Edwards play and at least have some kind of presence to stop the running game. Now, this week, it probably doesn't matter because Kansas City doesn't want to run. So you can do what you want to do, but you got other issues to deal with.
I think that the Chiefs will run the ball at least some. It's not like...
Well, they'll run it more than 3 times.
I was going to say, I'm going to take the over on matching up the Eagles' running performance this week with the Chiefs next week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, except he does have that key fumble in a game they lost to the Ravens the week before.
They're not going to do what the Cowboys did, is all I'm saying. They're not going to line up and go downhill. And just, they're not going to do that.
I would tend to doubt that. I agree with you there. One of the guys I got to ask about on the Eagles defense, and I think I know the answer already, but Ryan Kerrigan played 30 some odd snaps. He did not show up on the scorer sheet. He did not show up on my vision as far as being involved in any plays, getting a pressure on the quarterback, forcing someone to go wide on a run. He was basically non-existent. How bad is the thumb he's dealing with? We know he got hurt in the preseason and got very limited action and looks like a guy who's just rounding into form. And, oh, by the way, very slowly rounding into form. I know both you and I, probably a little more so me than you, liked the Ryan Kerrigan signing, thought it was a very good job by Howie Roseman, acknowledged they needed depth out there. And I thought Kerrigan had a little something left in the tank coming into the season. I'm not writing him off, but I am pointing out that he's done zippity doo-dah for the Eagles in 3 games since the season started. Is he just incapable of playing? Are they rushing him just because they have a now desperate need at defensive end? Should he still be on IR because of that thumb? Because Johnny, he hasn't done anything for the Eagles since he got here in any game that counted.
Yeah, I think the thumb is a bigger issue than it was made out to be. And Ryan talked to us last week before the game, and he said he still can't grab. And when you're using, you need to grab, you need to use your hands when you're playing defensive line in the NFL. It's really a big part of it. So I do think the thumb injury is a bigger deal than people have let on, but he's a tough guy. He's going to play through it. I think this is a place where you can criticize Jonathon Gannon. I mean, Ryan Kerrigan's playing a lot of 5 technique as a defensive end, which if you think about 5 technique, that's typically what a 3-4 defensive end plays. Not a 3-4 outside linebacker, a 3-4 defensive end, where you're sort of trying to occupy blockers so that the linebackers can make the plays. That ain't Ryan Kerrigan. That ain't Ryan Kerrigan at
And oh,
all.
by the way, you're setting the Eagle linebackers up to make
Yes.
plays. And oh, by the way, they're not making
They're
any
not
plays.
making it. Exactly. So you have on two levels, you have Ryan Kerrigan being wasted as a five neck technique and 3-4 pseudo looks, and you have linebackers who can't make plays anyway. Patrick Johnson, Jannard Avery, who are, Patrick Johnson started that game. Look, I coaches have this mentality: if you're up, you're going to play, and we need you to contribute. Next man up mentality. You also got to be realistic and say, all right, maybe it's time. And I think I mentioned this yesterday on the show when you and Jeff were doing it. Is this is where I'll say Jonathon Gannon should take some of that Nick Sirianni advice and say players, players, players. I'm putting Josh Sweat out there because I don't have Brandon Graham. If I got to change my looks a little bit and I'm not going as much 3-4, so be it. I don't have the personnel to do that. So I think that's the part where I would criticize Jonathon Gannon. I think Ryan Kerrigan's hurt and he's playing out of position. And if you got a hurt guy playing out of position, you're not going to have a successful guy. That's what I think is going on there.
All right, then if his snaps need to be cut, and I doubt they're going to put him on IR. You tried to force feed him into the lineup for 3 weeks, unless he's re-injured it and or made it a worse injury than it is. He's going to continue to play. Milt Williams didn't open my eyes at all moving outside. We talked about that prior to the game. They drafted him as to be the next Brandon Graham, inside, outside, has that flexibility and the like. Well, he didn't look all that flexible to me. He did nothing outside. Where do they go to replace Brandon Graham? If Kerrigan isn't yet up to the task, and we don't know if he ever will get there or not, is it just we're going to live with Milt Williams swinging outside? And because they drafted him because of the similarities to Brandon Graham, they're going to live with that?
That one, I agree with you. Number one, he hasn't played well, but he is a rookie player, and at least he has, the traits to develop as that kind of player. Certainly big enough to do it, certainly strong enough, certainly explosive enough. So I think that's just a young player who's, kind of feeling his way in the NFL, especially in that run game. He definitely didn't play well, but I think he's not. You don't look at Milton Williams and say they're putting him out of position like you do with Ryan Kerrigan. He's capable of doing that from an athletic standpoint. Now you just got to get him up to speed as an NFL player, and that's easier said than done with all rookies. But when you look at those edge players, and I was looking, if you go, and again, we talk about Pro Football Focus a lot, put it in context. They have these, their grades, their grades, Jody. Some make sense, some don't. They always put a red light, a green light. Like if you're playing well, they always put you're a green light player, red light player, not playing well. Obviously, you're stopping. So run defense specifically, red light players, Eric Wilson, Alex Singleton, we talked about. Now, at linebacker, those are red light players. On the defensive line, Milton Williams, awful. Teron Jackson, awful. Ryan Kerrigan, a little bit better. He's more in the yellowish.
Really?
Space. Yeah. Hassan Ridgeway.
Did nada. I rewatched the tape. I tried to zero in on him yesterday.
No, he did nothing other than
play.
Other than probably, remember what they're grading. They're grading his responsibility. Remember, he's playing 5 technique. He's not supposed to make plays. He's supposed to open up things for others. So that's how they're kind of looking at it. But I'm just bringing it up to point out to you just how bad those edge players, and it's only one game without Brandon Graham. And, oh, by the way, how good Brandon Graham is at that. That was a big part of that game and that run. The fact that Brandon Graham, you don't have to worry about the edge with Brandon Graham. He's going to set the edge as a run defender. And now you got to worry about it. And you got to worry about it big time. And if Brandon Graham is in that game, Jody, the Cowboys can't afford to go in and say, okay, these guys can't make plays. We're just going to double team Fletcher and Javon, and we're going to run the football. They couldn't do that if Brandon was out there. That's how drastically things can change in this league.
Right. But I in this particular game, and I watched it and I rewatched it again yesterday, 2 runs that actually got around the edge. Everything else was between the tackles. They just buried the Eagles at the point of attack. And I know how good Brandon.
No, I get it though, but
you can shed a tackle and shed a block and make a tackle. But in this particular game, setting the edge wasn't the problem. The fact that the Eagles got manhandled physically was the problem.
Well, what I'm saying, they did. But what I'm saying is it makes it easier. So you don't have to worry about the edge. So you don't have to worry about the edge as an offensive play caller. You're not concerned about Teron Jackson or Milton Williams at all. So you can say that we're going to force these guys to crash down and make a play between the tackles. We don't have to worry about it. We can double team the 2 really good defensive tackles and take them out of the situation, knowing the edge players can't crash down, the linebackers can't tackle, and then all of a sudden you have the 5, 6, 7 yard gain. So it all comes together. You're right. At the end of the day, they're going downhill up the middle. And then you could say, well, why isn't Fletcher doing something? People have said that because he doesn't have the statistics. You can't say it about Javon because Javon's been unbelievable. But Fletcher's getting double teamed. Watch the film. He's getting double teamed every stinking play. And that's, losing Brandon Graham was a big part of that against the Cowboys. And it's not a coincidence that this team shut down the run in the first 2 weeks pretty significantly. And one of those teams, by the way, is a better rushing team than the Cowboys, and that's the 49ers. And then Brandon Graham goes out, and it all goes to hell.
All right. A Howie Roseman specific question for you. We've already touched on the fact that the Eagles are, for lack of a better word, wanting at the linebacker position. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. A pretty solid linebacker became available in the NFL yesterday. Jamie Collins was released by the Detroit Lions. Now, Collins is a 10-year veteran. He's a 32-year-old guy. He's not a game-changing linebacker anymore. Well, game-changing linebackers don't get released in season as Collins was. He was released yesterday by the Lions. The Eagles could go one of 3 ways here. They could either put a claim in for Collins, who this year I think is $3 and change million, like close to 4. So with less than a fifth of the season gone by, you'd still owe him like $3 million for this year. He's got another year to go in his contract, but I guarantee you most of the money has already been accounted for because it's the last year of his contract. So if you didn't keep him for next year, you'd probably take a slight dead cap hit money, but not a lot. You can get him this year for a reasonable about $3 million for the rest of the year. The Eagles have, I believe it's the second most money under the cap right now in the NFL.
Amazing. It's amazing how that changes. Yeah. But yeah, we'll go back next year, Jody, and everybody will forget about it. Oh, the salary cap. Oh, can't do this. You can't do that. You can do whatever you want.
If you're good at it, you can create room. And that's one thing that Howie Roseman should get credit for. He does create it. But then again, it's something that you need to continue to judge going forward. Because every time you make one of these moves, it's like checkbook journal. You just create issues further down the road. And at some point, you got to be able to pay the piper. But Howie has done a real good job balancing the salary cap. That's an overall thumbs up for the Eagles general manager. Jamie Collins is a better linebacker than the linebacker the Eagles have right now. He's not as good as he was 2 years ago or 4 years ago, but even this iteration of Jamie Collins is better than what they have right now. Do you want to use some of that cap space? It's not like Jeff Lurie's going to keep, we could move it forward to next year. Okay, fine. We don't know that they'll spend it correctly next year. Do they care about winning games the rest of this year, John? The Eagles could either claim him and then they know what they'd have to pay him this year and next. They could hope that no one claims him and then negotiate with him and probably cut an even better deal under the cap for this year and no commitment for next year. And yes, they could tell him, listen, we'll plug you right in right away because we've got linebacker plays to be had here, Jamie, if you want to come play with us. Or they can just say, listen, what was the word that Jeff used? Transition. We're in a transition year. We're not worried about, we're not going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs this week anyway. Jamie Collins doesn't factor in to the future of the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll take a big time pass. If you were in Howie's seat, how would you handle Jamie Collins becoming available on the open market?
Well, if I'm in Howie's seat, that's one I don't even have the conversation with. I mean, he's just not a fit for this team. Now I value linebackers more than they do, so that would change the thinking. But if you're putting me in Howie,
after this week's game, shouldn't the Eagles reevaluate themselves and how they evaluate linebackers?
They're not going to. For the reason I talked about, well, a couple things. I just want to make it clear. You can't. Jamie Collins is a vested veteran. He's not on waivers, so he's already on a free agent. He's a free agent. You can't claim him. After the trade deadline, which is usually around Halloween, I think it's early November this year, then veterans have to go on waivers. So that short period, they try to ramp up the trade deadline and they try to make it a bit of a penalty. Then veterans go on waivers. But until November, early November, if you're a vested veteran, you're cut during the season, you're released, you're automatically a free agent. You don't have to go through the waiver wire process. But as far as the Eagles and their value, here's the reason, and I get their thinking, I just don't agree with it. I mean, look at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is the perfect example because they're the Super Bowl champions. They had two playmaking linebackers that were a big part of their Super Bowl run last year. So linebackers matter. They are a different type of linebacker, though. It isn't Dick Butkus. It isn't Ray Nitschke. It isn't Jeremiah Trotter even. It isn't those big downhill guys. It's the athletic ones. You saw it in Dallas with Jalen Smith. Now he's had some injury concerns. They used him to spy Jalen Hurts. Leighton Vander Esch has had some injury concerns. And now they've got Micah Parsons, who has had to play edge rusher, but is going to be a linebacker ultimately. They obviously value the position a little bit more than the Eagles. Devin White, Levante David, on and on and on. Darius Leonard, Eric Kendricks, Bobby Wagner. These are the best linebackers in the NFL. They all have something in common. They aren't Dick Butkus. They aren't those downhill guys. They're the guys who can do everything. They're the guys who can run from sideline to sideline, athleticism, coverage, and at least be respectable in the run game. That's what you want. That's the part the Eagles can't get. They can't get linebackers that are even respectable in the run game. And if they do, TJ Edwards, they can't cover anybody. So they haven't been able to toe that line, Jody. And the reason why is like any other position. I mean, if you have top 10 first round athleticism, Devin White type ability, you're going to go high in the draft. And that's where the Eagles don't value the position. The highest, pedigreed player on this team is Davion Taylor, can't stay on the field. And by the way, I think that's a disappointment because I think he'd probably be a starting linebacker here if he was healthy. That's the way they were gearing at the beginning of training camp. It seems so long ago. They were throwing him in the deep end of the pool, which if you remember, I advocated that. I said, that's the kind of linebacker they want. Let's throw him out there and see if he can do it. To their credit, they tried to. The guy just can't stay on the field. But everybody else, undrafted free agent. You got Sean Bradley, who's a 6th-round pick. I mean, you got to put some kind of substance into that position when it comes to valuing it, and they just don't. They just don't.
So you think picking Jamie Collins off the scrap heap is a bad idea? Just a
No, well, I think it's a bad
idea?
idea because of the transition. He's 32. He's done. He's near the end. He's not going to have. I'm not worried about beating the Kansas City Chiefs. And by the way, if he came in this week, he couldn't help you that quickly anyway. I'm not worried about winning games this year. As you know, I've said, what is this season about? This season to me is figuring out what you have in the quarterback and to a lesser degree the head coach. Everything else is secondary.
Let me play devil's advocate against you here, John. And it's you and Howie Roseman and the entire organization. You're citing Jamie Collins. Whose playing time are you taking away? Who are you not allowing to develop at the linebacker position? Because Jamie Collins is going to be out there, may potentially help them win some games. And yeah, they're 1-2. Unless you want to tell me, well, Dallas crushed us. We can't compete with them. So we're not going to win the division. We're not going to get a wild card in a tough NFC. So we really don't care how many games we win this year. They're not mathematically eliminated yet at 1-2. Who is Jamie Collins taking reps from that the Eagles are losing out on at linebacker if Collins is playing?
Well, I don't think they're losing out as much as there are some young players. If Avion ever gets back, you do want to see him play. I assume they want to see him play if he can ever stay on the field. Alex is still young and very cost effective. TJ is still young and very cost effective. Remember, even a veteran minimum salary is much more than those guys make. Jamie's been around forever. That part of it doesn't make sense. And, maybe you hit on one of these guys. There are undrafted free agents in the Hall of Fame. Maybe one of them turns into a player. Maybe one of these young linebackers, they throw the dart at the dartboard. Maybe they hit one. But you're not going to know it unless you throw them out there and play them.
And I don't want to make too much of one game. And this past weekend against the Cowboys was one game. But that was some of the worst linebacker play I've seen by the Philadelphia Eagles in a decade. So I would ask you, John McMullen, throwing that dart at the dartboard, Singleton, Edwards, Bradley, Taylor.
But that's the thing.
Which one is actually going to hit? Which one do you think?
I don't think any of them.
Throw out the Cowboy game. That's the exception, not the rule. This guy is going to be a player. Which of the group of Eagle linebackers are you going to make that statement about
I don't think personally, I don't think any of them. But that's why that's why the expression
That's why you pick up Jamie Collins. If you firmly believe that none of them is going to become a 3-down, make plays, tackle guys, linebacker, well, then short term, let's see if the Eagles can win some more games. And if they can, Jamie Collins can help them do that.
Well, here's the reason.
Pick a guy like that up.
Here's the reason. I always bring up this guy because I got to cover him. And it's an amazing story. And he is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you threw that same conversation at me when I was watching John Randall early in his career, and you said the defensive tackle equivalent of Jamie Collins, said, well, John Randall, he's an undrafted. He's not going to. That's when the draft was 12 rounds, by the way. He's not going to be able to help you. He's not going to be able to do anything. That's why it's called throwing the dart. Sometimes you hit the bullseye. You're just throwing it. 99 times out of 100, I know what Jamie Collins is. Is Sean Bradley going to develop? Is TJ Edwards going to develop? Is Alex Singleton going to develop? Probably not. Probably not. But at least I don't know. At least they're young. I would say this. I don't want Eric Wilson on the field. I want to give somebody else a chance, whether that's TJ, most likely, or even Sean Bradley, preferably Davion Taylor, if he can ever get healthy. I want to see one of those guys more than I want to see Jamie Collins, because maybe those guys can do something. Probably not. I'm saying the odds are definitely against me. I'm 40 feet back from the dartboard. I'm not hitting the bullseye, Jody. But I think it's for where this team is. I don't want Jamie Collins. I don't want a 32-year-old veteran who isn't very good, to be honest.
I thought Jamie Collins was a damn good player in his day.
He was a good player in his day, yeah, but his day is long gone.
Well, here's what it comes down to me, and apparently you and I have different ways to evaluate players and where the Philadelphia Eagles are at this year. I don't think any of the Eagle linebacker players right now are going to become 3-down players. I'm really disappointed in Alex Singleton. And I know he got a captaincy in it, maybe because of his special teams, but he is starting and playing every down at linebacker for the Eagles right now. And I don't think he's had a very good year. I thought he was much better last year than he was this year. And I'm wondering, did the league kind of figure him out? That does concern me. Edwards is what he is. He's a coverage guy. He's not a tackler. The signing Wilson from the Vikings seems to be a mistake at this point. Sean Bradley can't beat out these guys who aren't getting the job done. That's a really bad sign. And oops, you just bumped into Davion Taylor and he got hurt again. So there's the Eagles linebacking core as of right now. I think Jamie Collins comes in here and he's the best Eagle linebacker. At his advanced stage, with his game going backwards, he walks into the room today and it's the best linebacker they have. And if you can say that, if you can pick up a guy off the street and plug him into and give him 1 week to get up to speed, and you think he can be your best linebacker, how do you not do that in a season where you're out 1-2, but the Cowboys are only 1 game ahead of you at 2-1? Yes, you've called it a transitional year, but you're still in the NFC least, and you want to at least take your shot. How do you not pick up a guy like that? If, as I said to you a couple of minutes ago, if there was a guy that I really believe, you just got to give him time. Give this guy. He is John Randall. He was undrafted. He was a guy you took a shot on, and you've seen glimpses. You've seen flashes, and you believe it's going to come together. All right, then I say, yeah, we don't take Jamie Collins. I don't have that faith in any of these guys. And if that's the case, I got to go out and get a better player for the position where I have a gaping hole.
Yeah, but when it comes, I guess my point is when it comes to players like that who come out of nowhere, nobody knows. To a lesser extent, forget about a Hall of Famer like Randall. To a lesser extent, look at Alex Singleton here. And you're right. I that was the worst game I saw Alex ever play against the Cowboys, to be honest. But I don't think he was bad against Atlanta. I don't think he was bad against San Francisco. I just think he had a bad game.
Okay.
But my point with Alex is they didn't know. They didn't want to play him. They were forced to play him. And he was better than every other linebacker they had. So he's kind of a perfect example of why playing time matters. And some guys maybe being better on the field than they are in practice. I mean, but I do agree with you, and that's where I said I don't want to see any more of Eric Wilson. I've seen enough. He's a veteran. Again, we go back to Minnesota as well. It's not just this season. This is who he is. He cannot stop the run. I've been talking about it for months. So you do have younger players, and I do want to see T.J. Edwards. I do want to see more Sean Bradley. Hopefully, Davion Taylor can get on the field. Even go to the practice squad, Jacoby Stevens. They drafted him. He's that modern guy. You know, he's the safety turn linebacker. Throw him out there. Christian Ellis, they signed to him. That Luther Ellis's kid. Remember Luther Ellis from Detroit, the great defensive end. Throw him out there. They're not in a stage, and that's why I said at the quarterback in the biggest position. I'm not worried about winning the NFC East with an 8-9 record. You know, I'd like to 9-8 record, whatever. You'd like to, but to me, it's more about, you know, finding out where you are, that transition. I'm taking Jeffrey Lurie at his word. If it's a transition, it's a transition. Let the young guys play. Let the young guys develop. I don't want some guy in here he's going to be here for 1 year for 13 games. There's no need for it. That's not the position you're in. If they were a good team, I would seriously consider this. I would seriously consider it. They're not.
Right.
So
right.
I'm going. I agree with Howie Roseman in this.
Well, we don't know. Howie hasn't made a call.
Oh,
with
I
Jalen
know.
Collins yet.
I know. And Howie didn't call me, but I know Howie well enough to know that's one he's not even discussed.
No chance that
No
Jalen
shot.
Collins ends up here.
No shot.
All right, I'm not slamming the door just yet. Maybe it's a little overly optimistic on my part, but I would inquire if I were Howie Roseman.
I'm going to give you tremendous credit if that comes true.
Yeah,
I'm going to.
And oh, by the way, I've got a source. His name is Jody McDonald. I'm making this stuff up. I got no Eagle sources whatsoever. I'm just trying to use a little football logic, but I'm not the general manager of the Eagles, nor do I have a wire into him. All right, John mentioned quarterback. Oh, I want to talk about the quarterback when we come back, because Jalen Hurts was right there with the Eagle linebackers. Pretty ugly on game number 3 against the Cowboys. If you look at the box score, you were out of town, didn't catch the game, you go, well, it's not good, but it's not terrible.
Well, yeah, it was terrible.
It was pretty terrible. And we'll talk about it and the future of the Eagles at the quarterback position next year on Birds 365.